Mental illness isn't always visible. Just because someone seems to be happy, productive, or is showing up for work doesn't mean that they are not struggling. In this part of the video series, our 8 speakers talk about mental illness and how it has affected their personal and work lives. As you hear about the day-to-day struggles, think about this. Would a person unaffected by mental illness have to worry about this as much? Would they even give it a second thought?
Mental illness has definitely affected my life. So I went straight from undergrad into a PhD program. And so, with a PhD program in physics, you're working on classes, you're working on research, you're working on being a teaching assistant. And so all of that is really stressful. And so going in and, I had already had the medicine, I was already set, the medicine had already taken effect and everything was kind of good by the time I started my PhD. But there were definitely still more things that I needed to get used to. So after struggling the way I had in undergrad, I really began to not push myself as much. So I wouldn't get up really early and work out because I knew that was that didn't help things. I realized that just getting up and, taking a shower and getting ready for work kind of calmed things. When I got to my qualifying exams in my first year of my PhD, I realized that I had a ton of anxiety there. And eventually I had to go to the psychiatrist again for another medicine for panic attacks because I began to have those, just getting really stressed. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest was heavy. And so that was another thing that I've had to deal with. My qualifying exams were very, very stressful. And so that was something that was a real challenge and something that even now I can't really talk about them, even though I did pass them. Everything's great. I passed the written qualifying exams, but even now looking back at them, it was just so hard. And I got a lot of panic attacks around them. So even talking about them now, I can't really. Sometimes if I have a stressful event, then the anxiety will get really bad. And so from there, I just I realized that I really need to take things slow and just forgiving myself for not being productive. In academia, there's always kind of this expectation where you really need to work all the time and to be productive all the time. And so with anxiety, sometimes it was hard to breathe. Sometimes it's like a beehive in my head where it's just kind of buzzing all over the place and I can't focus on one thing. And so what's really helped me is just kind of giving myself a break and just being like, I can't be my best right now because, I'm having an anxiety flare. And so just, doing tasks that don't require a ton of brain power, or doing something like editing a paper, or just doing calming things, and just forgiving myself for not being 100% productive all the time, because I have this anxiety. So sometimes I'll take a nap, sometimes I'll take some longer breaks just to get some work done.
I struggle with my mental health a lot. Whilst I am at ease with knowing that I have a mental health condition, and this makes living with a mental illness somewhat easier because I'm not trying to always cure myself, but I'm learning to cope and develop mechanisms to make my life more comfortable. This is not always successful, and I'm often confronted with things that I know that my colleagues, peers, and family around me don't often worry about on a day-to-day basis. For example, before I ask a question to a colleague at work about a process or a form or an experiment that I'm conducting, I will think about how they will perceive the question that I'm to ask. I will try and envisage what some of the answers might be that they're going to say, so I can appear competent and almost in agreement with what they're saying. When I'm presenting my data, results, or a report to somebody, I'm very conscious of the criticisms or feedback that I'm going to be in receipt of. I don't want to appear incompetent or like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not worthy of being in the position that I'm in. Again, this comes down to imposter syndrome, and I'm not sure that this is something I will ever be able to get rid of, but it is a problem for me, and I hope that one day I will learn to be at ease with myself. I'm very over-analytical of social situations and sometimes avoid situations depending on the situation that I'm in and the quality of my mental health at that given time. I'm always constantly striving to be seen, to be the best in whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm always nervous about the way that I come across to either family, friends, work colleagues, strangers. I always think about how I am in that situation. Social situations are often very anxiety inducing for me, especially for people that I'm not so familiar with. I want to make sure that people don't think that I'm silly, that I'm not good company. And I think that I've just summarized my point there by saying good company. I worry about things so much because I don't want to feel a burden or like I'm taking up too much of their time, I think is a good way to put it. I don't want to let people down.
There will be days that, I would go to bed feeling like at least I could get my laundry done. At least I could clean the floor. At least I could dust the window panes and the kitchen counter. They were horrible. And if I actually start going into lots of detail about this, I'll probably start crying because they still make me feel so afraid. It was like falling into an abyss and not being able to climb out. It was so dark. So, and here's the little piece of secret that I would call my parents, and my parents are, so I'm a mathematician. My parents studied physics and they're extremely good students of physics. And so they're very, very passionate about mathematics themselves, both of them. And I would call them and I would tell them that I'm the worst in the world. And that's not easy for them to hear, as parents coming from their daughter, that their daughter is saying that she's the worst and that she's the stupidest person in the world. So I would call them and I would cry. And this happened pretty much every single day. So I'm very close to my parents and I would call them every single day. And every single day I would cry. And I would tell them, I should have never, this is not for me, no matter how much I love math.
Living with untreated ADHD as a kid resulted in me trying to overperform on the tasks that were easier for me, to compensate for mistakes in areas where I was lacking. If I could not keep my room organized, I would study more, so I would not be criticized on my academic progress. When you have the simple skills lacking, it becomes extremely important to have any kind of wins anywhere. Anxiety around performing has resulted from my traumas that I have internalized growing up with untreated ADHD. I have also internalized various labels that have been attributed to my personality, which in reality were my symptoms all along. Lazy, inattentive, flaky, irresponsible. Whenever I forget or lose something, I would hear a pretty common Russian proverb. Didn't you forget your hat instead? Unable to finish started projects, overly critical to self and others, too emotionally sensitive, too blunt, and many more. Have been living with depression and anxiety since I was 23. That is when I had my first major depressive episodes. It affected all the aspects of my life. I had lost social connections and support over time. I'm beyond grateful to family and friends that stuck around. I have been withdrawing from social interactions and too scared to trust new people and be vulnerable with others. I have lost jobs and opportunities due to anxiety and depression. I have felt that I'm not worthy of leading a full life. I felt like a burden to everyone around me, and I just wanted to become so small, almost invisible, so people would not feel uncomfortable around me.